I didn't set many boundaries, not because I didn't need them, but because I didn't know how without feeling guilty. I had learned early on that being flexible made life easier, that saying yes kept things moving, that being understanding meant being valued. So I adapted. I adjusted. I explained myself away. I convinced myself that discomfort was something to tolerate, not address, until one day I set one boundary, and everything changed. If this story is touching you, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. For a long time, my life felt manageable on the surface. Things weren't perfect, but they were stable. There were no constant fights, no dramatic breakdowns, no moments anyone else would point to as proof that something was wrong. That's what made it so hard to see. Nothing was loud enough to justify leaving. Nothing was obvious enough to confront. The imbalance lived in small moments, in the way my needs came last, in the way decisions were made without me, in the way my silence had become expected. I told myself this was just how relationships worked. You give a little, you compromise, you let some things go. But compromise stopped being mutual a long time ago. I was the one bending, the one adjusting, the one absorbing tension so no one else had to feel it. And because I did it quietly, it became invisible. I didn't even notice how much I was giving until I tried to stop. The boundary itself was simple, not dramatic, not aggressive, not even emotional. It was one sentence. I'm not okay with that. I didn't raise my voice when I said it. I didn't justify it with a long explanation. I didn't follow it with reassurance or an apology. I just said it and waited. The reaction was immediate: surprise, confusion, a pause that felt heavier than any argument we'd never had. They looked at me like I had changed the rules without warning. What do you mean? Someone asked. It's not a big deal. Someone else added. You've never had a problem with this before? And that was the moment everything became clear. I hadn't changed. I had stopped accommodating. For a long time, my silence had been interpreted as agreement, my flexibility as comfort, my patience as permission. This boundary disrupted that illusion. I explained calmly, not defensively. I said I wasn't willing to continue in the same way, that something didn't feel right to me anymore. The room felt different after that, not louder, not chaotic, just exposed. Because boundaries don't create problems, they reveal them. What surprised me wasn't the resistance. It was how quickly the dynamic shifted. Suddenly, I was being questioned. Not about the situation, but about myself. Why now? Why make things difficult? Why couldn't I just let it go like before? I realized then how much of the peace I had been maintaining depended entirely on my silence. This one boundary showed me something important. The moment you stop overgiving, people notice. Not because they miss you, but because they miss what you provided. The days that followed were uncomfortable. Not openly hostile, but tense. I noticed small changes in tone and body language, and how conversations ended faster than usual, and how my words were suddenly weighed instead of assumed. And for the first time, I didn't rush to fix it. I didn't explain myself again. I didn't soften my stance. I didn't step back into my old role. I held the boundary, and holding it felt harder than setting it. There were moments I questioned myself. Was I being unreasonable? Was I creating distance unnecessarily? Was this really worth the discomfort? These questions weren't new, but my response to them was. I asked myself something different. Why did this one boundary feel so threatening to everyone else? The answer was uncomfortable but honest, because it changed the balance. I had been reliable in my flexibility, predictable in my silence, easy to work around. That boundary introduced uncertainty. It meant I could say no again, and that possibility shifted everything. I noticed how much more aware I became of my own limits. Once I set one boundary, others became visible places I had been ignoring my discomfort for years. I didn't enforce them all at once. I didn't need to. That first boundary became a line I could return to. Whenever I felt myself starting to shrink, I remembered how it felt to hold it, grounded, clear, present, not powerful, but aligned. Some people adjusted, they listened more, they checked in, they respected the shift. Others didn't. They became distant, defensive, passive, and for the first time, I didn't take that as a failure. I took it as information. Boundaries have a way of sorting things quietly. They show you what survives mutual respect and what only existed because you made yourself smaller. I didn't lose everything when I set that boundary. I lost the version of myself that believed I had earned consideration, and I gained something far more valuable: self-trust. I trusted that my discomfort mattered, that my limits weren't attacks, that saying no didn't make me difficult, it made me honest. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but it became real. I stopped explaining myself to people who weren't listening. I stopped negotiating with my own intuition. I stopped prioritizing harmony over integrity. That one boundary didn't fix everything, but it changed everything. If you're rewatching this and you're afraid to set a boundary because you don't want to disrupt what you have, ask yourself this: is what you have dependent on your silence? Because anything that collapses when you speak up was never stable to begin with. I set one boundary, and everything changed.